Good evening. I am Pete, also known as Risk for Rewards on Twitter. I've currently got just under 14,000 followers. So if you're not following and you want to for the Cheltenham Festival, it's at Risk for Rewards over on Twitter. I've got the Cheltenham anti-post blog that is pinned to my profile, which you can view, which has all my selections for the last 11 months. This is my YouTube channel. If you click the bottom, you can subscribe. All likes are appreciated. Obviously, it pays to subscribe because it means that you get the content first, and it's quicker for me to for me to do a video than it is for me to write. So most of my content will be coming out here before it comes out over there. Over the next 5 days, I'm going to be recording 5 videos. Tonight is the first one, and that is just going to be a few pointers from my experience and past festivals of a few things that I look out for when trying to look for winners in the next 4 weeks, and also primarily on the week of the festival itself. And then over the next 4 days, starting from tomorrow, I'm going to be covering each day of the festival. So I'm going to go through early thoughts on each of the 7 races. Obviously, I won't dive too hard into the handicaps, but just a few early thoughts. We should get the weights for them in about 2 weeks' time, I think it is. I think it's about 28th of Feb. We should get those, so we can obviously start looking properly then. But if there's a few big prices or a few early ones to take, then it may pay to take note now before the weights come out, if it's going to be fairly obvious anyway. So if we get straight to it, I'm going to go into a few pointers. So a lot of these pointers will be a lot more apparent during actual race week itself. But there's a few things, if you're looking at a few early bets, you might want to consider anyway. So the first thing is your game race management, so your betting bank. To me, probably the most important thing, along with your mental stability throughout the week when placing your bets. We are all going to, like, I'll stand here and tell you everyone's going to do the right thing and be perfect and stuff. At the end of the day, they're not. We are going to go Cheltenham mental. Everyone has a few beers. Everyone loves it. Everyone enjoys the festival, and that's what it's all about. But my consideration to you would be just make sure you spread your eggs across the whole week. So make sure you've got a betting bank that can sustain the festival. Whether it does not matter how much you're staking, whether you've got the smallest pot or the biggest pot, but just so you don't miss out. What I mean by this is everyone thinks Tuesday is the golden day. It often is. But if you go there and you go full guns blazing and you go through the card and you're like, brilliant, I've got a massive pot for the week, that's great. But at the same time, if you go there and you come out of that day on the Tuesday and you've ended up with 0 winners, and then come the Wednesday, you're like, I've got nothing left. You've got 2 options where you're either trying to find money that you haven't allocated, which you shouldn't be using for betting, or your other option is the fact that you're like, oh, okay, I'm just going to skip today. And those races that you've studied for weeks and thought hard on what selections you're going to make, you then say, okay, I'm not going to back them. And then suddenly you have 5 or 6 winners on the Wednesday and you've missed all of those. So it's just about trying to weigh up. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a betting advisor. I'm not an anything. So these are just my personal opinions and my personal views. So all I'm giving is just a bit of what I've learned from past experiences of what could happen. So onto the pointers. So the first pointer is going back to the YouTube video, is I enjoy reading through everyone else's opinions. This isn't just about me. The same with Twitter. If you've got comments and stuff, throw them onto anything that I put up or send me questions. I'm more than happy to reply. I feel engaged. I love opinions, and obviously the battles. That's what horse race is all about. So list on the bottom of this video your Cheltenham Festival nap, the horse you cannot see beaten. It does not matter what price it is. I don't care whether it's 1 to 3 or whether it's 50 to 1. Put it on there. This is not like a name and shaming. I like seeing other people, so I might think, do you know what? I hadn't even thought about that horse. So throw it on there along with the race, and I'll have a good read through all of them later on when obviously the video goes live. So the first pointer to me, which is one of the strongest points, is festival form. And this is absolutely massive. And a lot of people think festival form, yeah, it's ran at the course. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, has it ran in March at the festival? There are horses that will never have experienced 60,000 people screaming at them. There are horses that won't have experienced full fields, as in fields bigger than 10. It is just so busy, and it's an experience like no other. A prime example for this year would be, well, going back to the past, you've got horses like Altiors and Shishkins who go in the Supreme, win the Supreme, and then come back for the Arkle. You're looking through, I know he handles it, he's already ran and won at the festival, so I know he'll have no issue doing it again. So that would not be a problem for a horse like that. So a prime one which would be interesting this year would be obviously John Bon and El Fabiolo. John Bon ran last year in the Supreme, in the busyness, we know he handles it. El Fabiolo did not. El Fabiolo has run at the Dublin Racing Festival, so people say, oh, big field. There's only about 16,000 or 18,000 people at the Dublin Racing Festival. So it is a difference. And also the other thing that's interesting is if you've got an Irish horse, for example, is the travel. So I'm a huge fan of Mighty Potter. However, last year Mighty Potter's one blemish on his record was that he ran no race in the Supreme whatsoever. He got to the start and the vet had to check him out. So the jockey was obviously feeling some sort of issue on the way down there. And then he was slightly keen, coming to about 4 out, he absolutely spanned it. But the front pack, the likes of John Bon, Constitution Hill, Dice Up Dynamo were long gone by then anyway. And then he was pulled up. He ran no race whatsoever. The vets couldn't put it down, and it was just a complete black mark on his book. Next run, obviously, he comes out and beats Serge Hard and Dice Up Dynamo over in the Leopardstown Festival in April. So it's Punchestown Festival in April. So there's nothing to say that obviously it affects that horse, and it could have just been an off day at any track, but it was the fact it was at the festival. So it's just something to bear in mind. Do I think it will affect Mighty Potter this year? More than likely not. But at the same time, if he was to flop again, people would be like, well, obviously there's some sort of issue there when it comes to the Cheltenham. And it's also time of year. It just shows that they can peak at that specific time of year. So a trainer can then work back from it and do the same the year after. So it's just something of consideration. The next one is course form, which obviously rolls into the other. Cheltenham is an undulating track and it is a test like no other. So to have course form, whether it's in handicaps, especially the handicappers that keep coming back each year, if they've already got course form, it's brilliant for when you're looking through your form guide. But what also is very particular attention-wise when you come to the cross country, obviously having the experience over that track and that course, there is nothing like that. They can go to Punchestown and they can try around there, and they're also in Pau in France. And that's a similar sort of scenario, similar racetracks, but they're not anything like the Cheltenham. The Cheltenham, it's like running an obstacle course at school. So it's just course form is very important. It's for me personally, I'd rather see a horse hasn't raced there than a horse that has raced there and not done as well when he's gone at flat tracks. We'll always have the flat track chat. The prime one will be Brave Man's Game. So a lot of people will pigeonhole in Brave Man's Game as a flat track horse, and would he handle Cheltenham, along with the will he stay, won't he stay in the King George, those sort of things. So there's horses that love tracks like Kempton, Aintree, and then they come to Cheltenham and they don't handle it. But you won't find out until they've ran there. So if they've got it, then it's a massive bonus for me and another tick in the points when you're looking at the form. On to the next one. So point 3 is previous winners. So what I mean by that is horses that have come from the year before, they've either won the race or they've ran very well in the race. So what often happens is a horse, say, again, we'll go back to a handicap. So a handicap will run off, say, 150. We'll win at the festival, and then after that, the horse does nothing for the next 12 months. And the horse, obviously, after winning at the festival, gets put up, say, £10, comes back, and then a year later, the horse is back on the same mark of 150. And you won't even be thinking about it because you'll be looking through the form and people will be like, oh, hang on a minute, that horse's form's awful. And then without putting two and two together, the horse will cross the line and you'll be like, oh, that horse won it last year off the same mark. So it's very important to keep an eye on these previous winners coming back, like multiple times. You'll get the likes of the same horses that will come back, and not just obviously in the same race. You'll get, say, an Arca winner might win the Champion Chase. There are a lot of horses that they come back and they replicate the form the next year. It might not be the exact same race, but they'll win at the festival again. They're the festival horses, the likes of Tiger Roll. Tiger Roll, 6-time winner, if I'm rightly. I think it was a Triumph, Kim Muir, 3 times cross country, and one other. If anyone else can remember, throw it on the comments. Love hearing it. Love Tiger Roll. So yeah, just always have those in the back of your mind. And a very good place to start as well for your form lines is look to last year, see who won the race last year, and then obviously does the trainer target that race, and can that horse run off the same mark? Is it entered again? Will it be similar again? Or if it's obviously like a handy, like your likes of Allaho in the Ryanair, so it's obviously normally after the race, but they're very good pointers for the start. A big one this year, yet again, is ground. Is the fact that this year's unseasonally right now, like normally, like last weekend, they'd be running on bottomless ground around Warwick and places like Haydock and stuff like that. And currently our ground is like racing strips. It is good to firm. They're having horses pulled out because the ground's too fast, which shouldn't be happening this time of year. So it's all very well you're picking. At the moment, we've had a little bit of both, but generally it's been fairly quick. We haven't had an awful like deluge of rain. We've had very cold weather, but not a lot of soft weather, like a lot of heavy ground. So in 4 weeks' time, if we suddenly get a mass deluge and it goes to heavy ground, all the form, a lot of the form from this year is going to go out the window. You're going to be looking for heavy ground winners, stuff like that. So in reality, the track will start on good to soft on that Tuesday, and then when they switch courses for the second 2 days, Thursday, Friday, that will be good to soft again. So the Tuesday and Thursday will likely be good to soft unless it's raining. So it's just something to bear in mind when you're looking at your form. Just make sure that unless the ground is the same as what we're having now, that you're looking at form that's been similar all year round. So a good one as well, coming closer to the festival, so these last 4 weeks, is you'll get artificial pricing and recency bias. So what I mean by this is the horses that have won last. So like say this weekend, if, I don't know, say Fakir Duderis absolutely bolts up, or Shishkin bolts up in the Ascot Chase, which obviously they're both looking towards the Ryanair. So their prices are going to go artificially very, very short, because they're the most recent runners to have obviously been there. Everyone's got it in front of their head. They're looking at Cheltenham straight away. And it's the same, the prime one that I really dislike as a race, used to be a good trial, is the Adonis at Kempton for the Triumph. So a couple of years ago, you had Tritonic, and Tritonic went from 10 to 1 to 2 to 1, having won there against the Irish horses. It was the same year where Gordon Elliott had Zanahiyr and Quilixios, who looked unbeatable over there. And suddenly this horse bolted up at Kempton and went into 2 to 1 favourite. And long and behold, he was 2 to 1, and then all the way up to the day, I think he went off about 4 to 1 or 9 to 2. So it's just worth taking consideration is the fact that if you miss the price, then it might not pay to just rush in and dive in and grab the price when you could wait till closer to the day. And something that we noticed last year was the fact that a lot of the markets are drifting back out. Like for years, the prices have been getting shorter and shorter, and then on the day they just remain or they get shorter. Whereas the bookmakers are pricing things in so short nowadays, you're getting a lot more value like on the day. So like the likes of Honeysuckle was 4 to 7. She was 4 to 9 after the Irish Champion Hurdle, 4 to 7 for most of the build-up, and she went off. She was 4 to 5, 8 to 11 on the day. And the same with Allaho. Allaho was a lot shorter, more like a 1 to 2 shot, and he was 4 to 6 on the morning and went off about 8 to 13. And everyone assumed they were steering jobs anyway, but it's just the fact that sometimes the books do go the other way, and that's what's happened last year, and I could easily see that happening this year, especially with how competitive this year is across the whole of the across all the fields. So onto a point that a lot of people complain about, but I've got no issue with, and as if you've followed me for a while now, you'll see that I often talk about, is the favourites. A favourite here pays the same as a favourite backing in a football match, a favourite backing at Wolverhampton. Like it really does not matter where your favourite is. Like a favourite is still paying you money if they win. So what I'm trying to say like this, people will be like, oh, why are you picking the favourites? Why are you doing this? At the end of the day, this book has been priced up over 12 months from the world's leading bookmakers and a combination of the world's best punters putting those prices, analysts saying things that are causing those prices to move to create a book that they're a favourite for a reason. So what I'm saying, no, not every favourite is going to win. That's me, obviously 100%. But at the same time, don't be scared of backing a favourite. Just because your mate says, oh, you're backing all the favourites, it doesn't matter. If you're sat there at the end of the night and you've had, even if it's like, I don't know, a fiver on each of the races, and you're sat there and you've got more money than you went in there with, and the favourites is what you... At the end of the day, it is better to back a favourite that you think's going to win than to try and be clever and put your money each way or without the favourite just to try and create value that you don't believe is there when you're so sure that the favourite is going to win. So my point is, just don't fear the favourites. If you think something's going to win, then back it. And if you don't, so this will prime for this year will be the Champion Hurdle. So there'll be people who think Constitution or Hill will win. If you think it's too short and you don't want to back it, then you don't have to have a bet in the race. Just watch the race. But something that I did in my early years was that I'd think, oh, that's too short, I don't want to have a bet in the race. So I'd then look in the without market, or I'd look in the each way market and try and find something clever. And then instead of you gaining a small amount of money by backing the favourite, I've ended up gaining no money and actually been behind for that race. So my advice is, favourites, don't be afraid of them. If you want to back them, and don't be afraid of what people say. If you put up 6 favourites in a day out of 7 races, then that's your choice. Who's someone to turn around and say to you that all 6 of those horses aren't going to win? And also, you get favourites like in a handicap, or it could be a 4 to 1 or a 3 to 1 favourite. What's the difference between you backing a 4 to 1 favourite in a handicap to you backing a 4 to 1 third favourite in, say, the Arkle? Absolutely nothing. They pay exactly the same amount. So don't let someone say to you, oh, it's a 30 runner handicap. You can't. Those people are the people that don't back horses like Galopin des Champs when he hoses in, goes 8-1 into 11-4 and wins easily and is now a champion hurdle contender. You listen to whatever you want to do and don't let other people influence you. If you want to back favourites, back favourites. If you want to go for long shots, back long shots. But all I'm saying is just don't try and be too clever at the Cheltenham Festival, because the Cheltenham Festival is the best place in the country. Well, it's the best event in my personal opinion in the world for making money, and a lot of it is made in the top 4 or 5 in the market in a lot of these big championship races. This brings me on to my next big point, which is one of my major gripes, and that is TV judges. So there are people that you can listen to and watch on TV, be it racing TV. You can listen to, at the moment, it's got even bigger this year. You've got YouTube channels, podcasts, ITV, everything. It is brilliant to watch, brilliant to gain understanding, brilliant to gain other people's opinions. However, what you also need to bear in mind is there's certain people that you will watch on TV and they are not betting any money. So what I mean by that is say for example, they've got like, I don't know, oh, we've allocated them the £10 challenge or £50 for the day, and this is what they've chose to put on. So they will stand there and they will go, oh, I think this is a certainty. This is going to be impossible to beat. That's definitely the each way value of the bet of the race. And you'll say, oh, okay. And you'd say, oh, how much have you put on it? They'll be like, oh, no, nothing. And the same as would you turn around and say, like, I could stand there with, I don't know, like not, I don't want to name names because I'm not that sort of person, but there's certain people that you'll be able to see and they'd be like, oh yeah, I think this is an absolute certainty. It's definitely going to win. Yeah, you definitely want your money on this. And that'll be on a live program to hundreds or thousands of people out there. And then you could be the co-host in the seat and say, oh, how much have you had on that? You seem so confident. And they'd be like, oh, no, nothing. Or if you told them, oh, you've got to put £100 on it if you're that confident, like as in of their own money, they'd be like, oh, no, I'm not doing that. So it's just taking everything with a pinch of salt, and also working out who the people are who are either professional punters or people who clearly do bet, because people who bet with their money think very differently to people who just analyse and assess and create things. Some people have got to cover 28 races from a broadcasting perspective, giving information on every single race. So they don't have the time to create and think, right, okay, well, where am I putting my money? Where they're not, that's not what they're paid to do, and they can put that aside and they don't interest. And then there's other people there that you can see from the way they are and what type of person they are and how they talk, that they are putting their money down when they're talking. And those are the people that you, not so much you want to listen to, but they're someone that if they're saying, I think this or I think that, you know that if that horse loses, they're doing their money as well. It's not just yourself. And that's why it's always important to have both of those sides of the perspectives. Some of the best analysts do not bet, but at the same time, some of the people who come on to your TVs and give you information and advice, they're not necessarily always the ones to listen to. So my advice for you there is listen to everything, but only bet what you think, if that makes sense. Onto the blog. So the Cheltenham blog. The Cheltenham blog started through COVID. I wrote for a company called We Love Betting. It started quite small there, and I had an absolute brilliant week, putting up an average of 3 winners per day. And that was out of four horses I was putting up each day. And then come the end of the week, I decided that I'd write my own blog. So for the last 2 years, I've been writing my own blog. And the issue that I had in the first year was a lot of people obviously didn't have any of the prices because I was only slow. I was trying to work out how to bring the blog along. And it got to Cheltenham and I had all these prices and no one else did. So what I set up from 2021 onwards was that every time I backed a horse, I put it on Twitter or I wrote it, and then I'll either put it straight on the blog or write up the blog for reasoning later on. And that way, every person who's following me on Twitter will gain the exact horse of whoever it is that I'm putting. So like this year, we're looking at horses like Lossymouth at 16-1. There's people who have got the Galopin des Champs and Brave Man's Game double that I put up. I put that up this month last year, so obviously 13 months in advance. Brave Man's Game won the King George, so the first leg's in, and then the other leg is Galopin des Champs to win the Gold Cup. And for me, I think it's 55-1 I had, but some people who had better accounts than I did, they've got 90-1. So like it's things like that, and then obviously it just means okay, some of them they are going to get losers as well, because that's what happens in this game. Not all your anti-post horses are going to make it. So you can find my blog on the @RiskForRewards Twitter, and that's got my bets from the last 11 months. And everyone who follows me on Twitter will have had the option to follow those and to put those on themselves. So onto the race week itself. So Bookie's boosts. So I'm not an affiliate in any way. I don't have any links to tell you to go sign up for anything, and I don't get paid for doing anything that I do. It's all off my own back. But Bookie's boosts, normally I'm against, like as in it will come up and it'll say, oh, back this at this price, you're getting a good deal, all of this sort of thing. It's like going into a casino and you've got the big glazing red number. It's basically saying, do not back or lay this horse, rather than, even though it looks like it should win at even money. The only exception to this for me is the Cheltenham Festival. I think bookies will boost all of the horses because they want to get them in the books. They want to take all the money. But at the end of the day, you're betting on the best horses at the best time. In a footballing term, it's like betting on like the World Cup finals or Champions League finals. Those players, the same as the horses out there, they are trained to 110%. The jockeys will be the best jockeys available on the day, and they will be doing everything they can to win those races. So you could not have a fairer playing field. If you back a horse that's boosted and it loses, it's just the fact that it was not good enough on the day. There's nothing corrupt about it. There's nothing, oh, there's this or there's that, oh, Betfred knew or anything like that. That's not the case. So for me, on this occasions, yeah, of course, there are going to be some where you're thinking, hang on a minute, everyone's boosting that. That is a bit of a big golden, or hang on, big red letters. However, generally, on the whole, there will be bookies just looking to get every horse and every favourite in their book. So take those early prices. They don't harm. I'm not saying take them all, obviously, and you'll know what I'm on because all of mine will be on the Cheltenham blog anyway. Which brings me on to the next point, which is race management. So this is, as I was saying, goes back to my original point of having your betting bank. It's also my Cheltenham blog that I put up, and the same way anyone else bets across the whole week. There's 28 races, so you have to decide the way you're going to stake for each race. Like certain people bet in different ways. Some people will bet 4 or 5 horses in a handicap each way, and then they'll have a tiny bet in the Arkle. Other people will put all their eggs in the Arkle and then have a small bet in the handicap. You have to decide which way suits you, what races. I keep a record personally of what races I've done well in the past, so I know where I should be staking higher and lower, and what to expect from those races. I know that, say, like an Arkle will have a smaller field, so less variables to worry about compared to a big field like the county. But that's not to say that I'm not going to have a really strong fancy in the county one year and then I'm like, hang on a minute, I need to put a few extra pounds on this one. But what I'm saying is that some days you could have 4 out of 6 winners and you could come out maybe level or down. And then another day you could have 1 out of 6 winners and you could come out up. And all that is going to come down to is you having a plan of how you're going to stake and go across that whole week. So I learned this the hard way many, many years ago, and in the fact that there was horses like I was trying to work out on one of the days when I was first starting the festival, and I'd back, like, say something in an Arkle, like just completely off, like this obviously isn't a real story, but say it was Sprinter Sacra, and Sprinter Sacra was, say, my favourite, like that was my horse I expected to win, not just that day, but across the whole festival. And I had, say, amount 2 points on Sprinter Sacra. Sprinter Sacra wins even money, so I'm plus 2 points. And then I'm like, right, okay, here comes 2 handicaps. Like, oh, I'm not sure what I fancy, so I'm going to back 3 horses in that handicap, and then I'll back 3 horses in that handicap. And then I look at what I've just done, and I'm like, oh, well, across those 2 races, I've just staked 4 points, and so now I'm minus 2 points. So I've 2 races that I had no clue in whatsoever. I've just obviously ended up setting myself back below, and my biggest certainty that I thought of that week is already gone, and now I'm behind. And you've got to think to yourself, that did not make sense to do that. So what I'm saying is just lay out a rough guide. We're all going to be thinking about the Cheltenham Festival for the next 4 weeks. Write down the races, write down the horses, write your numbers by them and go, I fancy that one the most, that one the second most, that one. You don't have to put the bigger amounts of money on those, but it's just so you've got it roughly in your head. Like for me, a handicap should always be less stakes. Unless you've got a really strong fancy, there should always be less money because of the amount of variables, a 30-runner field. And you never know what's going to happen. Like, look, Prime would be the Dublin Race Festival. What happened with Lossiemouth? That was a tiny field. Things like that shouldn't happen. But that in a handicap, that is very likely to happen. You're not going to get plain sailing in a handicap. So it's just something worth bearing in mind and just laying yourself out. Which brings me on to my next point, which is upsets. There are going to be upsets. There always are, and it doesn't really matter how you put it about it. So there is no point, like obviously laying out over a year, people are going to put all their eggs in certain baskets. A prime one this year would be, I'd imagine there'll be nearly every single person at that Cheltenham Festival will have backed Constitution Hill in some way, probably at evens or above, or 4 to 6 and above. and by the time the day comes around, he could be, I don't know, anywhere between 1 to 2 and 1 to 4, and it could be a small on a field. Um, and like if he was to lose or if he was to fall, then obviously some people are going to be like, I've got no idea what to do next. Like there's absolutely nothing that you can do about it. You're just going to have to like accept these sort of issues that happen. Like the biggest downside for a horse that gets to that sort of price for Constitution Hill is I would be so disappointed if he was to fail or we didn't get to see the race. I'd rather see him beaten than for us not to see his true reflection of how good or bad or like what level he's got in him. Is because you just want to see a fair race. There's nothing worse. Like so gutting if like say him or State Man was to fall and then you just like right. So say Constitution Hill fell, like you wouldn't even get to see the race, and we only get to see these race horses. So you just have to hope that they get there. A massive one last year would have been there was a lot of fans of Galloping Des Champs over Bob Ollinger, and looking at it now, like that was an absolute like luck job that Bob Ollinger managed to win that race, and that was probably his best race of his over fences. But looking back to that now, like that, you couldn't call that anything more than like just complete luck on the day. It's so unlucky for one horse, and so very lucky for connections of the other horse. And these things will happen. So like, there's no way of preparing for them. It's just one of those things. They are going to happen. The only way that I would say personally for me is I'm not saying you. For some people, you'll have backed certain horses all year round, so it's not you can't put your eggs in all one basket. I remember when I did it when I was a few years ago with Sam Crow. I just couldn't see Sam Crow beating the Ballymore, and like it was very lucky and relieving at the time. But I didn't realise, I hadn't contemplated loss. So I just think it's like looking back now, it's worth thinking about. You can't prepare for those sort of things, but at the same time, if you've already got say a horse like him and he's on for a good win, if you're on for a good win, if he wins, you don't need to put him in every single one of your accumulators. You don't need to put him in all your multiples, because at the end of the day, yes, he might win and he should well win, but he's also going to ruin your week even more if you lose all of those and everything else that you already had. Again, just my personal opinions. All of these are just my personal preferences. And going on to that is the experience and fallers. I think Willie Mullins is riding a tightrope at the moment with a lot of what he's doing. He is obviously, I'm never questioning the master. He is the brilliant at Cheltenham, brilliant everywhere else. But a lot of these novices, he's coming here, whether novice hurdlers or novice chasers, he's getting closer and closer to the line. He's trying to get one prep run in, then run them at the Dublin Race Festival, then get them at Cheltenham Prime. And that's perfect, but not every horse is the same. And some of these horses, like novice chasers or novice hurdlers, they're coming in with less and less experience. So they might be coming here with like one run or maybe two runs at most. And for some races, that's fine. But like a prime example would be Sir Gerhard. I would not write him off whatsoever because of the class that house has got and Cheltenham Festival form. And not just once, but twice, obviously taking the bumper as well. But the issue is that you come here and then if these horses get in proper battles, like, and the same happens with Galloping. Like Galloping went there and he'd only had 2 chase starts. That was a complete unlucky fall. There was nothing he could do about it. But at the same time, you just don't know. Like if they'd had a bit more experience, would he have done things differently? You don't know. And it's just something always to bear in mind when you're looking through, is that some of these runners might come here and they might have only had one hurdle run or one chase start. And if it's factored into the price, that's fine if you're getting a slightly bigger price. But if it's not, just be very wary, especially if they're at short odds. Obviously, with the bumper, I'm not so worried. You can go there with one run, it doesn't matter. They're running in a flat circle. They're either good enough or they're not. And then the final thing I want to cover is just is a bit of a combination of a few things. So the first one is, as I've mentioned, quite a lot of this is your mental game. So having your head in the game. I personally, I remember I had one year I had a Tuesday and Wednesday where I could barely find a winner, which was really rare for me because they used to be really good days. But then on the Thursday I went to the racetrack. I didn't sit there and worry about it. Thursday I went to the racetrack and I had Vitor, Thistlecrack, Limini and Cause of Causes all won, and I had them in an accumulator, 100 to 1 accumulator, and all of them won, one after the other, and then the rest was history. So it's just one of those things. Just don't get downbeat about it. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And also Tuesday and Friday chaos. Everyone gets so excited about Cheltenham Tuesday, and so do the bookies because they'll be waiting for you. And then the Friday. So people go mental on the Tuesday, then Wednesday, Thursday, plod along, and then Friday, it's like all the money's burning their hole in their pocket and they want to throw it. Friday is notoriously the most difficult day. Like you're betting, like a lot of the time you get a horse in the Gold Cup, they'll be say 6 to 4, 7 to 4, similar prices to what they would have been to like, I don't know, a champion hurdle horse or an Arkle horse. Yet the Gold Cup is so much more difficult to win. It's always very competitive. the Triumph has so many short price favourites turned over. Obviously, we've got a mare's chase now, when you never guarantee that they're going to run 100%, and you've got two big handicaps, and the Albert Bartlett is wide open every year. So people come there with loaded pockets, and they just go mental because it's the last day. Like, obviously, I can't stand there and tell you, don't do this, don't do that. It's just worth bearing in mind. Like, the Friday is just a complete another day of racing. I personally do not change my stakes. I do not raise and go mental. I do think, looking at the cards, I'd be disappointed if I don't have a good Friday this year. But at the same time, I'm not going to change anything, and I'm not going to go berserk. That's for sure, whether I'm up or down, or I've had winners or losses. And then finally, multiples. So multiples in the past, I've not been a fan of. And now I've started putting a few up on Twitter here and there, and I just think there's a time and a place for them. Cheltenham is a time and a place for them. But I always say the way to make money, whether it's because it's a short price or not a short price, is singles. So if you think something's too short to back on its own, say, I don't know, say it was a 1-2 shot, but by putting it with two or three other horses doesn't make it a bigger price. It's still a 1-2 shot. So at the end of the day, if you normally have 1 point each race and you want to put it on a 1-2 shot, then just put it on that 1-2 shot as a single. You don't have to suddenly start putting a million different multiples and trying to be clever and stuff. But I enjoy doing a multiple. I normally do one through the week, and I do one each day, and like things like that. But they are the smallest of small bets. If you have, say, 3 points on each race normally, then a multiple should be like 0.25 points for your day or whatever. They should not affect it. They should just be like a nice big bonus, like I said, I've won 10 points extra today. Just from that, it shouldn't be like, I need my multi to land in order to have a profitable day. They should just be like, I've got a £5 free bet, that'll be what pays for my multiple. And you will have that nearly every day. You're going to get a £5 free bet or whatever if you bet online, and that could be your multiple for each day. And I will have on my blog, there will be multiples, but there won't be a lot of multiples. It will just be a few multiples, I think, to have throughout the week. So that's pretty much it from me. But as stated, the main thing, going back to race management as well, is my Cheltenham blog. At the moment, the anti-post blog is pinned to my profile, but the Cheltenham blog itself will be out the Sunday before racing. That will have every single bet that I've had so far from the last 11 months, and also in obviously the last 4 weeks for the build-up. And they'll all be listed there with full analysis and reasoning, and also a few 2024 pointers, so horses that could win at this festival to back for next year before they run, because there'll be much bigger prices. So you'll have the option, you'll be able to see exactly what I'm backing and how I've played all of my bets. I can lay all my bets out, and then that way I can just have a small pot to one side and just add to wherever I need to in the races that I haven't filled, because I'll update the rest of the races depending on like where I need to, if the handicaps and stuff later in the week, but the majority will already be there. So from tomorrow, that will be day one of the Cheltenham Festival. Will be getting covered tomorrow, and then onwards for the next 4 days. So hope you enjoyed this. If you can like, that'd be brilliant. And also if you subscribe below, there's going to be plenty more of these videos coming. Thank you very much, and let's get Cheltenham mental.